through any of this. This was just a spur of the moment thing that I had. I ended up with a knackered diesel heater. It just kept smoking even after I serviced it. So I thought, pull it apart, put a new one in to replace it, which is what I did back at home. And therefore I thought, well, what am I going to do with a diesel heater? And bear in mind, it was only a couple of weeks ago when I was off ill that I thought, okay, let's buy a box for it. Put it in a box, because I saw some things online. So that's exactly what I did. So just to show you, there is storage in here for the remote and power leads, which is quite handy. I wasn't going to buy a very expensive box. I think I spent £18 on that box when all the others were nearly £80 to £100. But that's me, cheapskate to the extreme. What is good about this, right, I'll just spin it round. You've got the heater out there, heater outlet there, if that makes sense. This thing I've nicknamed it Tubby the Toaster. And those that watched Teletubbies would understand what Telly thing is when he spits the toast out. I've got two fans running in the bottom of it, but the two fans are controlled by the switch on the back there, just on and off, because when you're running the heater in a very tight box, you need to allow a bit more airflow, not only for the combustion, but also just to take the heat off that pit of exhaust pipe when it comes flying out. And it's worked very well because I have actually used it. Good thing is 230 volt powered, and when you're on 230 volts, you've got your power pole, you've got a high spec charging USB thing, and you've also got a 20 amp socket up there, rather than the little old 10 amps that you get. I bought a heavy duty one because inside there is a 30 amp power supply. Only cheap Chinese one, but still their thing. However, if you happen to be out on field and you don't have 230 volts, you get your power pole, you plug it in there, and you also get your 12 volt power supplies out and your USB. So it does that all like that. The one thing that I haven't finished off yet is the hanging of the exhaust pipe there. That is to be used with the extended bit going out. Obviously you take precautions with it. You don't use it in your tent. You keep it outside your tent and blast the air into it. And apart from that, it's all open, it's all fitted in there. And it's got, and I thought I'd mount the diesel tank on the side of it. Only a little diesel tank, but it's heavy enough as it is. That's my presentation.
After Mike.
Just a quick question for Mike then.
Yeah.
If you've still got to connect an external battery to run the heater, or is that completely self-contained?
If you're running it on 230,
Yeah.
that'll run the heater.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're running it from a battery pack, it will run from your battery pack.
Okay. So basically, you need an external battery pack if you want to run it independent of mains.
I couldn't fit a battery powerful enough to do that because those diesel heaters do use approximately 10 amp on startup, 12 to 15 amp on shutdown.
Brilliant. Okay. Thanks very much, Mike.
Okay.
So, one really interesting 50 cal ammo can. Now, I appreciate, guys, it's not really radio related, it's a bit different. It kind of come about as a bit of a necessity thing for me, really, as much as it's useful for radio. When you drive Land Rovers and you have vintage reliable equipment, stuff gets wet, stuff gets dropped, things get thrown about. Paul very gladly back there brought in some old alarm batteries. It sat in my workshop for a bit, gathering dust, and I thought to myself, what shall I do with it? So I thought to myself, well, it'll make a decent portable power supply. What do I house it in? The world's most reliable, cheapest, most ruggedized housing you can probably find. And then I thought to myself, well, let's go one step further and make it useful. It needs some lights on it, mostly because when you do things in the dark you need to be able to see. Why not do it that way? So basically inside this box is a 20 amp standard battery, really out of an alarm. It happens to produce some quite nice light. Then to be fair, I haven't quite finished the leads for it. A nice addition to it would be to put some power pole leads on it so you could power external things with it. And just in case anybody does ask, that battery is in there secured. Well, I'll show you that. But be careful I don't trap my fingers doing this, because I did do that when I built it. And that battery is quite nicely tucked away in there. It's not coming out of there.
It's not big, is it?
The idea originally when I built this was to divide it and possibly turn it into a toolbox or something else. Again, as it kind of evolved, I kind of haven't really, left it a bit of a blank canvas really. I think probably I will divide it and turn it into a bit of a toolbox as well, maybe. Or possibly even, like say, if you're going to take it on a field day, put extra batteries or other equipment in there. It is quite nice and bright as well. The sort of lights we use on the back of trucks and other various vehicles. So try not to blind anybody, but it's quite nice if you're on the side of the road with a puncher, for example. It's quite nice and bright. And the other thing is, within reason, you wouldn't want to carry it very far, but you can pick it up and carry it. So, a bit of an unassuming one, something very basic, not massively technical, but hopefully something different to have a look at. There we are, I think that's me.
Right, next one, there's a couple of things from me. This year I've kind of not had a lot of time, so I've not gone elaborate and built anything fancy this year. I've been kind of working on antennas and things like that. The first one, which is quite a nice little antenna for weather satellites. It's a 120-degree V dipole. I designed and 3D printed the enclosure at the top and made it so that it gave me all the correct angles, and then put the BNC in it, connected it all up, and then from the inside I've managed to completely fill this with silicon sealant, so it's probably never going to leak. But that is tuned to 137.5 megahertz, which is exactly in the middle of the satellite reception band for weather satellites. It's got a usable bandwidth of around about 2 megs either side, and then the SWR starts to climb. You could just about get away with transmitting on the 2 meter band on it, but I wouldn't advise it because the SWR is pretty high by the time it gets up there. But quite a usable antenna, and I have had some really good weather pictures come down off that. This was built as a comparison really to see how it compared with the quadrifilar helix, but unfortunately I've not been able to get them up in a similar position to be able to try them and see what difference it actually makes. But when it's been on the top of the pole in the garden, it's actually produced some quite good images. So yeah, there you are, that's a 137.5 megahertz V dipole. And the other one, for those of you who remember the Wellbrook loop, unfortunately Wellbrook went out of business, and a couple of radio hams got together and they came up with something that they called the Well Good loop. Yeah. This one's a bit of a hybrid stroke homebrew stroke kit thing, because the preamplifier, that is a balanced preamplifier, sits in the top container here with the BNC on the end of it, and then the connections go down through into the lower container, which is basically made out of a straight through UPVC conduit box, and then it goes out to the two ends of the loop, and basically the connections are riveted on inside the box. It's all sealed up with silicone and whatever, so hence the reason I'm not taking it to bits. It works exceptionally well. The loop, I confess I cheated with, in that I didn't actually make the loop. I knew somebody who had some loops from when they were actually making them, and I rang them up and said, have you still got any of the loops left? He said, yes. He said, I got 3. I said, good, can I buy one from you, please? So that was how I got a hold of a very, very nicely formed loop that was actually made by a metal fabricator with a proper rolling mill. Testing this, I tested it against the MLA30 loop, which is the little wire loop that I've got at home, and just using Shannon Volmet as a test, I was receiving the Shannon Volmet at 15/9 on the little loop. On this, I was receiving it at 40/9. Not only that, radio 4 on this was fully quietening. It was like listening to FM. It was literally right up the end of the scale. It's got a good usable bandwidth from the long wave right up to around about 50 megs. I have had FM broadcast band on it up at 100 megs, but it starts dropping off up there. It's not designed for that. So that is it's all fully sealed up. That was originally a conduit box lid on the bottom there, which gives me a nice way of connecting a pole, and then that will sit on the rotator. There's a bias T that goes with it, which belongs in another box, which I haven't actually finished building yet. But as I say, a very, very useful antenna. Don will know these because he's got the Wellbrook, which is the original one of this. So there you are, the Well Good loop. And that's it. Got to try and be quick here. A little bit of messing about. So this is my Boy's Own 80 meter transmitter. It's from a design that was on the internet, and it was by
Peter Parker VK3YE. It's a Pierce oscillator and it's got a little bandpass filter, and I put a 47 ohm dummy load on there as well. Had a lot of problems with the FETs because they're eBay FETs, so I bought 5 and got 1 to work. So originally it was on a Vera board. It was going to be super small and beautiful. My soldering is terrible since I was 16, but anyway. But that was went smoky. That was the smoke test. So I quickly assembled and as laid out on the board on the circuit diagram, just to make sure I didn't put anything in the wrong place. But I can give you a demonstration. I'll give it to my assistant over here. I'll just power up this unit because it's got a bit of a consumption draw because it's not efficient, obviously. Right, so I've actually got my rig here in the background as well. So it's super attenuated. Right, so hang on.
Just click it away.
Yeah. Oh, it's on LSB. Okay, give me a second. Volume up. M7EXV. So that's the AM station. Yeah, we're going to do CQDX on this as well. Quickly turn it over to CW. All right, so
Well done.
that's it, really. It's my first transmitter I've ever built, but I wanted to do one since I was 16 years old, but you weren't allowed to then because of needing a ham license. So that's why I got my ham license, just so I could build that. Not really.
What frequency is it on, Paul?
Sorry?
What frequency?
Now, because of the crystal set, I said, right, I'm going to make my own flipping transmitter and test it. It's actually on 3868.
Oh, that's all right.
Now, I was going to get a variable capacitor and try and pull it to 3663, but it won't pull that far. Okay, that's me. Thank you.
Well done.
Good evening, everybody.
Sorry,
I'm glad I made it here tonight. Just to let you know that after the new year, I was back being touch and go again. So I've spent the last 3 or 4 weeks trying to get over everything. Okay, what I brought along this evening is a 2-meter transverter, and it's a hodgepodge. I had the idea when my Yaesu FT100D was sort of not working. I thought, well, I can get back up to 2 meters and various things by using either the FT1200 or even the dear old Heath kit. And I thought, well, yeah, I looked at all the circuits and if I bought a transverter, it's going to cost me 300 or 400 quid, and I thought, forget that, let's see what we can do. So it's a thing that I bought things off the internet as cheaply as I could, as well as sort of raiding the bits box at home. So it's a mishmash. It's not quite complete yet. I still have a big problem with it, and the problem is the PA amplifier decides to keep blowing up on itself, and the answer is I don't understand why it's doing this. However, if I tip it up, it basically consists of this is a 24-volt power supply off of Amazon, 12, 13 quid, nice and dead cheap. Chinese job, as everybody says, no problem at all. And then attached to that, there's also a DC to DC converter, which I've also modified to give me about 7 or 8 amps of output, whereas the DC-DC converter is probably about 1 amp at best from a 7812. It's got an RD717 FET amplifier stuck after it, and that'll give me about somewhere around about 7 amps. the transverter itself, the first standard transverter is again off of the internet. It's the Ukrainian transverter, which is the UT3 LMZ, might be UT5 LMZ, but you can look that one up. So that does the transverting job, both up and down, which is great. On its own, it's a wonderful piece of kit and works very nicely. However, it's because it's sort of simplistic, it's dirty. It gives a nice signal out, 28 megs in, 144 out, etc, etc. It's great. But you start looking at the rest of the bad on the spectrum analyzer, and it just looks like you know, a hair comb. The worst thing actually is the 116 megs coming through, which of course is the main oscillator frequency to take things up and down. So in order to overcome that, I've had to add a notch filter to get rid of the 116, because I thought it was that was causing the problems with the PA. Now the PA is 45, or should be 45 watts. And it's this thing here, again, another one of the wonderful Chinese jobs, £12.50 or something. And I made it up, and I actually, first of all, tried it on the FT100D. Put 1 watt in, 45 watts out, absolutely wonderful. No problems at all. And then I put it on the transverter, which again, 1 watt out, straight in, etc, etc, blew up the transistor. Put a new transistor in, checked it again, everything fine, no problem at all. Tweaked a few things back again, thinking I got problems. Tried it on the FT100, 40 watts out, put it on the transverter, blew the transistor. And I think I've blown 4 transistors so far. Admittedly, coming from AliExpress, they're about £4.50 each, so they're not a big expense. But the idea wasn't to actually sort of spend all my time buying transistors from the Chinese. And I still haven't got round to actually figuring out what it is that's causing the instability. The only thing I can possibly think, Andrew might help here, is that it's hooting. But of course I can't see it hooting at 40 watts, because like a lot of things, it's only when you switch it on and you get 40 watts out at the beginning does it go round and hoot. It doesn't do it on the transverter, which if you normally has an output of about 4 or 5 watts. Now I've backed that all the way off, it's only got 1 watt out. But that doesn't mean to say that the circuitry in there is causing a loop and it's hooting, and as soon as it does that, it will blow the transistor. Whereas of course with the FT100, it gives a clean 144 meg output. You put that into the amplifier and it just loves it. Comes out 4 or 5 watts. No problem at all. I've tweaked it all the way up to 50 watts and it sits there happy as Larry. As soon as I put it onto the transverter, bonk, it goes. So I've still got to try and figure out, and that's easier said than done, I'm sure Andrew would agree, what is causing the loop to happen. I've unearthed everything, I have done everything in my power to figure out why it won't work on the transverter. And I've dialed everything back as much as I can, but as soon as I put it on, within, yeah, it goes, first time it goes, I think great, nice, put it round, second time round, transistor blows. So there we go. That's my transverter. It's still work in progress. I've got another transistor on order, but I will try and figure out, I'll back everything as off as I possibly can and sort of start racking up the sort of watts, brackets input and output and so on. But anybody got any good suggestions? I'd be more than happy to have some ideas. And put it this way, if nothing else, and I spend the next 6 or 7 months trying to figure out how to work, you'll see it again at the construction night next year, because it will be a new project.
Hey,
With a big fat valve in it.
I take my bow.
thank you.
Anybody who's got a mast and has got more than one antenna up the top, what do? You run more coaxes up the mast, or do you do something else? Well, I've got a 35-metre run to my top of my tower, so putting decent coax on it and up to that length tends to be a bit expensive. So I thought, what else can I do to do this? So I looked around the internet and I found various options for having an antenna switch at the top of the mast. Now there are basically 2 sorts out in the world, and Mr. WA4MCM Kits makes one of each. That's a 4-port and an 8-port. The difference in price between the two is 0. But the difference in functionality is quite marked, and it depends on your abilities as to which one you want to have. The 4-port, we'll start with that one. It is fed with a AC supply to it. There's a reason for that, because the 4 ports are then controlled at the top of the mast by the coax, and they shove the power up the coax, and a suitable filter at the bottom and a filter at the top to take the power off. So if you send positive 5 volt, a positive voltage up there, you get one. If you put a negative voltage up there, you get a second one. If you put nothing up, you get a third one. What do you do for the 4th one? You put AC up there. So the bottom line of it is you don't get a DC connection from your radio to the antenna. Not really a problem, because when it's working on that antenna that's got the AC going up the coax, the transmitter is not going to take any notice of it at all. But let's just say you're like me and a bit forgetful, and you want to check your antennas with an analyzer, and you go through click, 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 click. What happens when you get to the one with AC on it, which is going to come back across straight into the back of your analyzer, and oh dear, that's a problem. So, since that was one option, the other option is this: is a 4-port one. I'll show you inside what it looks like. But sorry, it's an 8-port one. The 8-port one doesn't use the coax; it uses a separate cable going up, 4-core cable. So that's ground and 3 signal lines, which gives you 0 to 7 in binary, which gives you 8 signals. So that's what I did. I got some nice 4-core cable, ran that up the mast, and I put half of this project up the mast. It's still there, so it's not here. And I'm not bringing it down because it's 30 odd feet in the air at the moment.
Doesn't it work from here then?
Oh, yeah, Wi-Fi. So that's it built. There is, it's just a kit, nothing special about it. There is one aesthetic problem in there. If the constructors can find it, well done. Well, it's aesthetic to me anyway, but there's just one fault in there but it works fine. And anybody who works me on 80 meters or 40 meters when the mast's up, or 10 meters or 6, that's what's being controlling which antenna is being chosen at that particular time. So you pays your money, he takes your choice. Do you want a 4-port or an 8-port? I selected the 8-port. Okay. Due to lack of power supply plugs and sockets, and not knowing what it is, because my power supply outputs 12 volts but doesn't tell me what it is, it's just an output, I thought I would produce this little box. Nothing clever inside. I haven't got the right size screwdriver to take it apart, but it's only got wiring in there to common it all up, 1.5 enamelled wire to couple it up, but that's a voltmeter in the middle.
cheap and cheerful. Alibaba, as you say, supplies everything these days. So and some of the other bits came out of the junk box, as did the books and that. So that's all that is. Nothing really clever, but it allows me to put two power supplies into it and take, 4 power pole connections out, or whatever combination of that I wish. So really quite simple. And finally, in progress project. You can see from the metalwork, it's got the markings out for the holes to be drilled in one end of it. This end's got holes started, but they're not reamed out to the full size because they're going to have BNCs in those. And the circuit board, if it'll come out, is not fully populated. It's got 4 circuits on it. 2 are semi-complete and 2 are not very incomplete, but it needs a power supply putting on there, 12 to 5 volt converter and capacitors and things. But that'll all go on there and it all slides inside. What does it do? Well, I decided to go and have a play with 10 megs GPDS-O. So I got a GPDS-O, 30 odd quid, you get them off of eBay and things like that, nice and cheap. And it gives me a nice signal, and I put it into the rig and the rig locks up to 10 megs perfectly. But how do I connect up the scope or the signal generator and other pieces of the kit to lock them all up as well? You need a distribution amplifier. So that's what this will be. Two inverters, Schmidt inverters. The output commoned up so they drive each 4 ports. So I'll have 1 input, 4 outputs, and it's just for 10 megs for calibration purposes. And that's all that is. There is, in this, I found today, a design, a Tony Ryder design fault. I wonder if you guys will find that as well. It'll have to be changed. There'll have something to be done about it. But there is a design fault, and it can be seen like that. I didn't notice it until I put all the bits together this evening to bring it down here. So that's another challenge for you guys. Nothing I build is absolutely perfect. It's all got problems and faults, but it all works. Okay, guys, that's my entries. Any questions?
You've all seen this over the last couple of weeks. It's the world's cheapest 3D printer. It is, genuinely. Right, go and look for it on the internet. Right, there's nothing cheaper out there. Why have I got it? Well, first of all, right, 'cause it really did tickle my sense of humour. But more importantly, every year I try to do something that's, for me, difficult. Yeah, and computers for me are difficult. And in the past, I've asked people like Jeff to give me a hand and maybe print something, and he's done it really, really well. So I know how useful these little, well, big devices, I've seen them, not huge, but this is a little one. How useful they really are. So my task for this year, my self-imposed task, if you like, is to actually learn how to use this thing, to be able to produce little bits and pieces. Interestingly enough, I want to be able to help the club members as well. I know that Donna's mentioned it to me, so was Derek as well, our chairman. They've never used this sort of thing before, never seen it working. So, yeah, get my head around it and then come do some presentation or two, get it actually set up and running so that we maybe print some, I don't know, badges, key rings, whatever you call sign on it, but just get our heads around it together collectively and individually as well, because this is the sort of thing that, as Jeff has demonstrated in his project, you know, being able to CAD this stuff up, that's a bit that's really quite actually worries me, is trying to get my head around the computer-aided design side of it. I had a look at it before quite a long time ago and then ran away very quickly. I did have to put it together. If you guys weren't here a couple of weeks ago, when I just simply dug it out of the box and Oh, right, okay. And then spent 3/4 of an hour trying to put the screws in the wrong holes, but it is fairly simple once you kind of do the immortal thing, of course, which we all don't do. And we open a brand new box with a new toy. Who is the instructions? You know, I mean, really? No, yeah, you kind of need to do that with this thing. I was really also massively impressed. It came with its own screwdriver. Which, hang on, before you laugh, I've lent to somebody else this evening. Right, so it was worthwhile.
Have you made anything?
I haven't quite finished it yet.
Okay.
I was about to say, it did come with the world's shortest length of PLA, right, plastic, and before I start threading it in, the one thing that I've seen is, and they've all got this wonderful screen on it that says stuff like feeding, temperature, blah, blah, blah. This is so cheap, it has a button. Right? And you have to physically like shift the knob from side to side to feed or retract. And even when you tell it to retract, it still feeds stuff down and then feeds it back up again. I think it's trying to clear its own nozzle. Part of what attracted me to this was a YouTube video by a guy called M0TCF. And I do actually plan to do what he did eventually once I got my head around it. He upgraded it, absolutely, made it work 10 times faster and far more rigid. I mean, it's a little, you know, yeah, AliExpress sort of rigid, not. And he did actually do quite a lot of design work, 3D printed extra bits to like, tune it up, etc. And that's what actually tickled my sense of humour. I love modding stuff. Normally it's cars or motorbikes or aircraft, but this sort of thing is actually out of my comfort zone completely. But I think like all of us at the end of the day, you know, we just want to stretch our minds and try and learn something new. It's kind of left of field as amateur radio goes, I suppose, really. But hey, I found this amazing website called the Thingiverse, right, which has got about 5 billion separate files on it. And if you just type in amateur radio, the screen goes bonkers with all these like different designs from individuals who are interested in doing stuff like. If you've got a Morse code key, there's about 4 million of them. You know, the main difference is the colour. But there's just so much out there, from little adapters that let you build a 2 metre centi-sems antenna that stands on its own, made from 4 bits of coat hangers. Weren't we doing that before though? We were. But you know what I mean? So, you know, whatever. One of the things I saw which I really like the idea of, and it's just so simple, there's a little rectangular plastic tag that you cable tie round your coax leads, and it has the frequency printed on it. You know, if you did it in different colours, you can colour code them. You know, Tony's got 8 cables, I've got 4. So like, is that a VHF or is that UHF? You know, is that the HF one? Analyzer? No. Like, put a tag on it, whatever. Yeah, it's all right. You can put masking tape around it, same thing in it. But you know, it's just those sort of ideas. You don't have to do anything massively complicated just to get into it. And I say my plan is, once I've got my head kind of around it slightly and run it up, is to bring it down here, leave it down here permanently. The only thing I have discovered with these is they're a bit slow to print anything bigger than that. But you know, hey ho, we'll have to see how it goes, and it's portable enough. I also figured if we're going to do some more public engagement, particularly with young people, scouts, etc. I know they've all probably seen this at school and gone, yeah, old hat. But at the end of the day, you can still sit there, take it with us, and I don't know, maybe get somebody interested in the left of field side of amateur radio. That's the plan, guys, anyway. Thank you very much.
Thank you then.